Hey, what's up, Cullen? I'm just getting started sharing the live out to some of my social media networks, and I'll be getting started here shortly. Really hoping some of these people who want to wage war, not only on Iran, but just the whole Middle East, because that's really what it's about. If they think that's a good idea, I definitely want to hear from them. Why? What's up, Jesus? Good morning to you. I don't know where y'all are, but I'm here in the North Carolina, behind enemy lines in North Carolina, as I like to say. In the belly of the beast of USA. Yep. I'll go ahead and share that. But I like to come with facts. I like to come from a logical perspective. Let me close this window. All right. Do I want to go on Twitter? Yeah. All right. Do I want to go on Twitter? Yeah. Even though I don't really rock with them like that. Interestingly, I caught Gronk. That is, what's the guy name who bought Twitter and then changed it to X? Elon Musk. So he got an AI, right? And I definitely F with AI, I really do. So anyway, he has one that's called Gronk. And it's supposed to be like the competitor to ChatGPT. And then the Chinese came out with DeepSeek. Let me go ahead and share this. So it was on there lying. I caught it lying on there just the other day. And AI, some of them will deliberately lie to you, because I mess with a bunch of different models. Some of them will lie to you, but if you know what the subject matter that you're talking about and cite some facts, and I'm not on here to endorse any company, but some of them will check themselves and be like, oh, you're absolutely right. You know what I'm saying? So that indicates like ethical coding. And so what Gronk was lying about was saying like Queen Elizabeth of what we call the UK today rocked with the Israelis, and she absolutely did not. But Gronk was lying about it. And while I'm on Twitter, I'll go ahead and okay, it's saying something about my live couldn't connect or I disconnected. Everything still seems to be going, but let me pull that up right quick. Where was that? Because some people have messaged me back on that. And again, when Twitter first launched in 2008, I was one of the first people to join it, just like Facebook. That's the same year that Black Talk Radio Network, the network I founded, created, and managed. It's a podcasting network, but it really started out as digital internet radio, and it still does offer that type of content, but it's mostly audio podcasting, but we can upload whatever we want. So anyway, Grok was lying about it, right? Let me see, mentions. I really don't be on here like that. Let me see. Notifications. So yeah, I'm just, before I get started, allow more people to join. I'm connected to like a lot of people on social media. They've been following the work that I do since 2007. So that's a long time. So well, this heat has really been getting to people here in the South, particularly here in North Carolina. I can only speak on that. It just, imagine going out into an oven. That's really what you're doing, is walking into an oven. And we had like 105-degree heat index the other day, and I think that might have been the hottest that I've ever experienced here in North Carolina, which really, I would say, had a very temperate climate. It didn't used to get this hot. We haven't had really any real snow in a long time. So yeah, I'm not gonna try to find that, but trust me, Gronk was lying about it. That's Elon Musk's AI. And then, if y'all recall, or those who follow tech news, Grok actually turned on its programmers. And I know Elon Musk ain't programming nothing. He got a bunch of people that work for him that's doing the coding. So they tried to change the coding to make it lie and say that there was a white genocide occurring in South Africa. And of course, everybody in the world knows that that's incorrect. That is not what's going on. What is going on in some cases is eminent domain, which a lot of people in the United States should know what eminent domain is. All right. So of course, Elon Musk is from South Africa. Part of that, and I'm gonna try to check my language. It's not like Black Talk Radio where there's no censorship, but I'm not complaining about guidelines. So let me just try to keep it clean as possible. But there is remember when people was accusing him of giving the mustache man salute at that rally and what have you? That's actually a salute, and yes, it's very similar, and it might have been inspired by the mustache man, but those South African Boers, their little white supremacist groups, do that symbol. And everybody be focusing on the Nazis when they need to be focused on the United States, because the United States preceded Hitler's Nazi Germany. So any ideals that Hitler got, hell, he gave shout outs to the United States in his book that he wrote, Mein Kampf, which translate My Struggle. congratulated them on exterminating the Native American populations and expanding the United States and growing its borders. Oh, he loved that. He idolized that. And they even had a working group where they came over here and studied Jim Crow segregation. Okay? Studied it. Studied how black people and other non-whites were treated under the law. So-called laws, right? So really, people shouldn't be using the mustache man, but pick a U.S. president. You could pick anyone and we'll find dirt on them. Jimmy Carter might be the cleanest. I don't know. And that might have been because he was only in there 4 years. But yeah. Now, before I get started, you know, I think that some people don't know me should know my background and why I'm really against any type of armed conflict between military powers in the world. I'm what they call a Gulf War veteran. I do not say that with any pride. I do not wear that on my sleeve or anything except for when it's cold and I'm wearing my BDU jacket and what have you. That's the only time that you'll see anything representing the United States on my sleeve, where I'm wearing that on my sleeve. So, but I speak as a veteran of a foreign war, spent 6 months there in the rear though, if you want to call Saudi Arabia the rear. And so I know a little something about war. And technology has tremendously advanced since the 1990s. That's evident in the casualties that we're seeing in Ukraine. And this is what y'all want to send y'all sons and daughters to. You know, when my daughter, all my daughters are grown now, only one still in her 20s, the rest in their 30s. And when one of them, the middle one, came to me thinking about, oh, I'm gonna follow dad's footsteps and join the U.S. Air Force, even though I was Army, but she was looking at joining the Air Force. And I was like, no. I was like, don't do that. And I educated her on what really goes on. What really goes on. Because we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about all the veterans that, all the veterans who unalive themselves every day. We don't talk about that enough, right? I'm in therapy now for moral injuries, not physical injuries. It's not physical therapy, it's mental health therapy. As I reflect on what I participated in. But again, technology has advanced, missile technology. Our quote unquote adversaries in that scenario have hypersonic missiles that we don't have and can't stop. So I speak from that context. Unless you want to see your sons and daughters, your cousins, your uncles, your dad go halfway around the world to unalive somebody else so the 1% can continue to rule the world and carve up and use the resources as they see fit. In other words, a continuation of U.S. empire. That's what most, and I'm gonna put this in quotation, Americans take pride in and brag about. It's how they've been able in their 200-year existence, even though they leave out the parts where they, got whooped, but has always been built on the Roman Empire. Just expansion, military domination, just what we call war crimes. That's the United States. And anybody that's being honest about it would just go ahead and acknowledge that fact. So let me see. I think I had allowed it for multi-guest for anybody to come up. I don't know how that runs, but if anybody disagrees, with anything that I'm going to be spitting over the next hour, you're more than welcome. But I probably know what you're going to say because you're all coming from a script. You watch whatever corporate cable news outlet you watch, now they're on the internet and what have you. That's the political gang that you joined, whether it's the left or the so-called left, which really should be labeled liberals, neoliberals. And then you got the so-called other side on the right-wingers and what have you. And they all lie. They all leave things out. And they all get ordinary people to join these gangs, pledge their loyalty to these gangs, and then beef with one another instead of beefing with the people who do not do the will of the people. How many polls, and I'm gonna bring up some polls as it relates to Iran. How many polls have we seen where the United States people, the people that they polled, were against the United States government taking a particular action in the world? We saw it with Gaza. We saw it leading up to the last election, the 2024 election. That was an issue. And all of this is happening, and the polls say the U.S. people, we the people, ain't down with that. We ain't down with this G-side that our proxy, Israel is committing. The majority of the people, on left and right side, That's something that a majority of the people agree with. Guess what? A majority of people don't agree with going to war with Iran. But what are we getting? From a very small percentage. And you will be surprised when I get through this poll and sum it all up for you, just how little support there is for all of this aggressive action against Iran, its sovereign nation. So let me just go ahead and get started. I'll try to monitor this because I'm just used to being on internet radio where I got a mic in front of me and I'm doing the program. We used to take calls. Some of the other programs still do, but I don't. I'm just really getting back into this after a break. But I'm not familiar so much with TikTok Live Studio, but I'll try to watch the board in case anybody disagrees and wants to come up and probably give me some lines that I've heard it all before. But in the news and in the so-called mainstream narrative, a lot of folks love to talk about how this nuclear deal with Iran was working under Obama. Have y'all not heard some of your liberal friends point to that? Oh, things were so much better under Obama. We had a deal under Obama until Trump came along and he tore up that agreement. And not only did he tear up that agreement, he escalated things. He did a grave injury to Iran by assassinating, which again is against, I think it was an executive order by Gerald Ford who put out that that type of stuff is illegal, but there's never any enforcement against these people for violating their oaths to the Constitution, for breaking federal laws. It don't matter if they on the left side or a Democrat or a Republican, they all get away with high crimes and they don't commit no misdemeanors. Ordering the bombing of civilians is not a misdemeanor, okay? But when he bragged about taking out General Qasem Soleimani, who, by the way, y'all, and this is key, let me set this up before I tell the uninformed who this guy was and what he was doing. Then think about the motives of why did Trump do this? Why did he do this, right? So y'all do know, hopefully, if you don't know, you're open to looking up the information. But I believe since 2011, the same year Obama unconstitutionally waged war on Libya using NATO as a proxy, okay, under the guise of fighting terrorism, but they was partnering with the jihadists. That's who Hillary Clinton was talking about when she was like, we can't wait until y'all capture and unalive him, and started laughing about it. Y'all remember that video clip? This is, of course, at the time, an ally in the war on so-called terror, right? But the U.S. partnered with terrorists to do regime change on this country, Libya, that just happened to be on the list of 7 that they wanted to overthrow in 5 years. And the ones they have are still destabilized today. They got African, black-skinned slavery markets in Libya. That was one of the consequences of NATO destroying one of the most prosperous Pan-Africanist nations in Africa. Making moves to combat Western dominance and exploitation by getting regional nations and partners to, hey, we got all the resources. Why are we using the U.S. dollar? Why don't we come up with our own currency? See, the only thing that gives the U.S. dollar any value is the same thing that when you're playing the game of Monopoly, the only thing that gives that paper money in those boxes, you know, that the banker holding, whoever's playing the banker or whatever, or is in charge of the money, we'll call them the Federal Reserve, you know, the only thing that gives it value is when you're playing the game. And when some of these nations or leaders said, let's not play this game no more. We don't need to use this fiat currency. We got the gold, we got the platinum, we got the uranium, we got the diamond mines. You need it, we got it. And then that marked him for being unalive, for assassination by the U.S. government. So the prompt is like, you know, saying, why would Iran trust these people? But getting back to who Trump unalived with a missile, which also, of course, what they call collateral damage is to show how they really don't value non-white lives around the world. They just call them collateral damage. But took him out, took his car out with the people that was traveling with him as he was visiting a country right next door that at one time the United States had them two fighting each other and unaliving each other in mass numbers. Remember, U.S. gave Saddam biological, no, it wasn't biological, it was chemical weapons. So those who say that, oh, they talk about death to America, death to Israel. If somebody was doing all this to you, what would you say to them? Like, nobody's supposed to respond. The logical response is escalation in war and being able to combat that. But he took out Qasem Soleimani, who was a hero for beating back ISIS. So who really is ISIS and funding these type of groups? Again, it's been documented. U.S. Has these agencies that do money laundering through other shady things and setting up shell corporations. Oh, come on, y'all. Let's not act like this isn't the norm. It hasn't been the norm for quite some time. But let's get back to Syria. Who did Joe Biden, before he left office, congratulated for overthrowing Bashar al-Assad's government, democratically elected at that, even though it's, it was one of those family type dynasties in political power, like we have here in the United States. Bill Clinton has yet to go sit his old self down somewhere out here on the campaign for Cuomo. Two SA abusers, credibly accused. That's the DNC. That's who y'all following as Democrats. And of course, Republicans, you find similar scandalous individuals. But they thank the guy who was on the U.S. terror watch list, who crowned himself the new president. Where do you think they was getting their weapons from to wage that campaign, if not from the U.S.? So let's not play dumb. Like, we really don't know what's going on. Let's not be a part of a cult. And I'll get to the data later, but the American people, even by these polls that the establishment try to send out, the majority of us do not approve of our government. And let's just be honest about it. I don't care what political spectrum you on, you know that this government is corrupt. These people are placed themselves above the law. Just violate the Constitution every day, violate our rights every day. Matter of fact, about 2 years ago, I was arrested for just standing on the sidewalk with a sign in front of a courthouse with a Confederate monument. Peacefully standing there by myself. They made everybody else run. I got video of it. I posted it. Everybody else can't afford to go to jail. Single mothers, fathers, they need their jobs to support their family. It's not a large group. Chased them off under the threat of arrest, and I refused to move. And I got processed in that jail. So don't tell me we have a democracy and that we have civil rights. You don't have them if nobody respects them. And if it's your own governments, whether that be your local government, your state government, or the federal government, if we see them violating people's rights, then get in the corporate media to gaslight us into saying this is something that it really isn't, like calling the G-side protests on college campuses, which in a lot of cases were led by Jews who were advocating for end to the mass unaliving of other Semitic people. Palestinians are Semitic too, the most direct descendants of the Hebrew Israelites that the West reads about in the Bible. And that's DNA evidence, but that's another thing. So that's how they gaslight us. The cable news works hand in hand with whatever factions the owners of those networks are down with. I just put out a post the other day on Facebook about how Fox News, which has always been heavily, the imagery would be U.S. flags and we're the super patriots and all this and that. But really they do the bidding of who? Israel, because they're Israeli firsters, because their owner, Rupert Murdoch, is an Israeli firster. Who, this war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu, not that long ago, it was sometime in the mid-2000s, 2010, somewhere around there, said he's an unofficial member of his cabinet. And even though Rupert Murdoch is American-born, he's an Israeli firster. And that is clear through his business investments and just keeping it to the network of the propaganda, right? But let's keep it nonpartisan, but let's get to what they talk about this thing that, what was it, the JCPOA that Trump tore up, which was dumb, and then to come back in office again and then try to make a deal, which really I don't believe you're trying to make a deal. It looks like regime change. Because Trump is no different than the ones who came before him. There is a deep state. There really is. And Trump played a whole lot of people and acting like he was against the state and was for we the people. But again, some people, man, they just let their biases, it's a certain term they call confirmation bias. They consume media that doesn't challenge the views that they hold and cause them to do any research to find out what's true. A lot of people aren't looking for what's true. They're looking for a confirmation of what they believe. And these corporations in the deep state exploits that. These are psyops, psychological operations. So, but let's get to the JCPOA they talked about, like that was such a great deal. It wasn't so great for the Iranians, but they still held to it. But Obama never fully held up his end of that deal. Under Obama, he didn't lift all the sanctions as the U.S. government, his administration, negotiated with the Iranians that we'll stop trying to destroy your economy. I mean, come on, y'all, that's act of war right there. Who is the United States but the big white supremacists? It don't matter if they had a chocolate face in there one time. He still was down with them from jump, okay? But he only waived some of the nuclear-related secondary sanctions, mainly to let other countries and companies do business with Iran. But most of the primary sanctions stayed in place. So the deal of the JCPOA is we won't seek a nuclear weapon. We'll only enrich to certain levels needed for civilian. We'll allow these third-party countries to come in and take away our waste. I think it was Russia who the USA Inc. is at war with right now through their proxy in Ukraine, just belligerent. And who's the most violent people on the planet? Jeez. But he didn't weigh the ones that was crushing their sanctions. And then here's the thing that kills me is they left sanctions in place as it relates to terrorism. What you mean, the support of liberation organizations that the U.S. government has deemed as terrorists, but really aren't. They're freedom fighters, indigenous to the lands that they're fighting in against an occupier? Really? Who's really supporting terrorism, y'all? Joe Biden and Donald Trump recognize a person who was listed on the U.S. most wanted terrorist list as the new Syrian president. It shouldn't be hard to acknowledge these facts because they are indeed facts. So American businesses were still banned from dealing with Iran, and Iran was still blocked from using the U.S. financial system. Let's stop right there for a moment. And you wonder why Donald Trump has been talking trash about BRICS. For those that don't know, there is a trade alliance, an economic trade alliance. It's not really military, but some of the members do have military alliances. But this is about, again, why did they unalive Gaddafi? Because he was floating this topic around in the African Union about creating an African currency and setting up an economic bloc similar to the European Union. Okay? And they unalived him and brought back chattel slavery to Libya. And then just wipe their hands of it. That blood, that continuous blood flow that continues to flow, that's on the hands of them Clintons, that's on the hands of them Obamas. It's on the establishment hands. And it's on the hands of those bipartisan warmongers that they have in like Ted Cruz. What's the guy from South? Lindsey Graham. And we all know who the warmongers are. And when it comes to committing mass violence across the planet, there's no divide there. We, the people, need to just be honest and recognize. I don't know if I could get in trouble for saying this, but really if you can get in trouble and deported or thrown in prison for saying free Palestine, then you could go to jail for anything. Again, your so-called rights don't matter because these people don't even hold to it themselves. Let's just throw that out there. But I was like thinking earlier, those J6ers really had the right ideal, but for the wrong reasons. And under the wrong leadership. And I don't care how many of you got pardoned or your sentences commuted by Donald Trump. You still were useful idiots to him. Because as he's clearly showing, he's part of the deep state. Just by his actions. And over there, buddy with NATO. How many times he run on defunding NATO? Which was supposed to be, we need NATO to protect us from the bad and evil Russians. And the communists, even though they might be socialists or a mix of capitalism, and because people own businesses and people get rich over there, but whatever. That's what NATO, the North American Treaty, was supposed to be about. Protecting them from an invasion. But they've been used as an offensive force to invade and bomb countries back into the Stone Age like they did to Libya under Obama. But here's Trump, buddy with them. He ain't talking about defunding them no more, is he? He ain't talking about withdrawing from that alliance, is he? Because he's a liar. Like all of the ones who have run at least since Jimmy Carter. I was born in 66. I can't, and I do read history, but during my lifetime, that was probably the most honest person you had. But his administration did still have some policies that were neo-colonialist. and had some people in his administration were warmongers too. So, but anyway, American businesses still were prevented from dealing with Iran. They were still blocked from using the financial system. So that's why BRICS, Brazil, Russia, is it India or Iran? I think it's India. But China and South Africa, BRICS, Economic Alliance. We're no longer going to use the US dollar. We're going to trade in our own currencies. How dare they act in the interests of their nations and their people? How dare they place value on their currency and not into US monopoly money? I just don't see how logical thinking people, even if you live within the borders of USA Inc. and where they claim jurisdiction, how you could go along with that unless you just as crooked and corrupt and hope somebody notice you and tap you to run for office, and then you can grift and ignore your oaths to the Constitution. So by all accounts, all the third parties that was involved in this, Iran kept up its end of the bargain by drastically reducing its nuclear program. The U.S. only gave partial release. So again, if you was Iran today, would you trust anything these people say? As the old has been attributed to Native Americans, the white man speaks with forked tongue. Today, it's not just these white men, but it's white women, it's black men, it's black women. Don't get me wrong, white supremacy and who they attack in the world and who they exploit and who they enslave are all non-white countries. But we have to acknowledge the participation of individuals who look like me. And this whole taking pride in people because they made it up the ladder and all, but it's not about them, it's about what they do. So you can close your eyes and ignore all of that all you want to. You're the one who got to live with you. And if you believe in a higher power, you're going to have to give an account. But Iran kept up its end of the deal. And then they, with the help of the U.S. corporate media, then accused Iran of not living up to the deal. And all the networks left and right just saturate us with these innuendos, these rumors, just straight up lies to brainwash us, to manufacture consent. But again, despite all this, and I credit this to the independent media. Again, I've been in the independent media, started in 2007, launched Black Talk Radio Network in 2008. Still in the game, providing a platform for others and other voices. That trust in that corporate propaganda media is at an all-time low. Because more people are able to access more independent media via various platforms. Y'all know the platforms like this one, like I'm talking to you right now. We're able to reach these people and share things from a different, or give you a different narrative than what you're given from these partners of USA Inc. All that stuff is entertainment anyway. Gang mentality. So again, why would Iran or anyone in the world looking at the United States think that they can believe a single word coming out of Washington from any U.S. administration, whether Democrats or Republicans? What does the record show? Broken promises and undermined agreements. And it's not just about sanctions and nukes, but regime change. That's the real plan, and that's slowly being revealed to you. Certainly we have the propaganda networks out there egging it on and what have you. Tell me they didn't bring Oliver North on as a military analyst on Fox News when he was the agent the Reagan administration used to sell missiles to Iran. This is after the 1979 revolution. I don't want to even get into the history of that and the deal the Reagan cut with the revolutionary students, because those were students. Those were young people. Anytime young people have a revolution and what have you, it's the old people that's trying to crush it because they've been in power and position for decades, man. And that's the thing, being able to overcome the machine. So I wouldn't trust them. I wouldn't even make a deal with them. I would just not talk to them and stop being so nice. So going back to it's being revealed that this is all about regime change. This ain't got nothing to do with them trying to get a nuclear weapon, which all parties, including U.S. intelligence, said they weren't trying to get one. Again, they were holding to the deal. They only increased the enrichment value, I think, up to 60% after, and you need something like 90+% to develop a nuclear weapon. But they only enriched it up to that level to show they do have the technology. If we wanted to, we could, but we're not, because we really think that's an immoral weapon. And that's why we in the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And Iran's not, who, y'all ain't talking about they undeclared nuclear secret program that everybody is aware of. No IAEA inspections coming in there, and I wouldn't let them back in the country, Iran. I've been reading that you said y'all ain't dealing with them because they provided information on their nuclear science, personal data, and spying, so Mossad could take them out, or whatever Israeli agency, the IDF, whatever. I'm sure the U.S. probably assisted. These actions are not the logical actions of somebody who's just trying to bring peace to the Middle East. These people playing in our faces, nominating Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. I guess since Obama ridiculously got one, Obama, as he's called, for all the drone strikes and bombing. Yeah, he took out U.S. citizens with a drone strike with no trial. I wrote about that too. But yeah. But Wesley Clark, getting back to Wesley Clark, after 9/11, he revealed that there was a plan in the Pentagon to overthrow 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And you see, we involved in many conflicts like that. And that's why some of these other West African nations are kicking out the French, kicking out all of these quote unquote Western militaries, because you're not there to fight terrorism. In fact, you may be funding the other terrorists and giving them intelligence and what have you. You're not here to do that. So get out of our country. We'll deal with them ourselves, which is the smart way to go. But in those countries, what have we seen? We call them war torn. These conflicts where all these people getting unalived. Let me see. Again, y'all, I'm trying to get used to this. So how do you do the thing if somebody has a request to join? I'm not sure. Multicast. Clicked on that. Yeah, I am monitoring. No guest requests yet. Okay, so I'm good. All right, so let me keep going through this information. So Wesley Clark, look him up. General Wesley Clark said that it was Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. All, might I add, all countries that Benjamin Netanyahu and his band of genocidal maniacs want to take over as part of this greater Israel that these people envision, these white supremacists envision, these Ashkenazis. Again, there are 12 different subgroups of Jews in the world, so people need to stop saying just blaming it on the Jews. No, it's a certain group of them. It may be some sprinkling of some black ones in there, just like the United States, but they ain't really calling the shots. But these are white people. But we're going to say Jewish Ashkenazis, who are all you see on television here in the United States. That's all you see. And they sending them out throughout the world. So there's that white supremacist element to it, but there's also a Jewish supremacy element to it, because you got Arab Israelis who join stuff like Mossad and what have you, and then go out and pull false flags because they're Arabs and they dress in a certain garb and get photographed or whatever, committing. A lot of these groups have Israelis among them. It may be a complicated picture for those who are new to geopolitics and don't really study history, but this is the stuff this is why you must educate yourself. We're as I talked about earlier, in an age of tremendous technological advancement. Man, you don't need to go to a university. All you need is access to the curriculum and do the research yourself. If you have access to the internet, you have access to a wealth of information. So it's just, and then you wonder why we don't have nice things in the United States. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina the other day, and at Johnson C. Smith, that's a historically black college. They're in Charlotte, in a certain part of Charlotte. And so they got a trolley, right? It's literal railroad tracks in the ground, in the road, traveling on the same road that the cars is on. It's not very wide or anything like that, but it just gave me 1930s vibes. While over in places like China, who don't invest trillions of dollars in trying to conquer the world by force, have invested in technology that our minds would be blown if we went over there. And the affordability of it, like their EV cars and stuff. This is why we can't have nice things, y'all. All our so-called taxpayers' money, decade after decade, going all the way back to Eisenhower, let's say post-World War II, that's all we do is spend heavily on that. Trillions and trillions and trillions. Don't invest in our no kind of infrastructure, educational infrastructure. Nothing. So every president is reading from this Pentagon playbook or trying to carry it out. They're way behind. Remember, they wanted to do it in 5 years because, that's what arrogant people tend to think of the rest of the world. Oh, it's just going to be a pushover and all this and that. Well, that's before they develop these hypersonic missiles, and you're not going to be able to stage a huge amount of troops in places that will allow you to station troops and bring in these troops. It took us like 6 months to get enough troops, about 500,000 troops in Saudi Arabia, because that's where we dispersed from. There's nowhere these rockets can't touch. And then that's not to even include if you bring in their allies. It's not going to let that country be destroyed and let the U.S. colonize another major oil source in the world. China is some of their biggest partners. And if you don't think that they're supplying them with missiles, you're mistaken. I don't want to see U.S., kids sent over there, man, facing such a thing. That's not even mentioning the drones now. Just in a swarm of drones, we cannot protect ourselves from today's technology. The Patriot systems and the THAAD have shown that you just overwhelm them with cheap drones and old, about to be out of service missiles. And then that's when you let the hypersonic go. And every time one of those air defense systems, missiles, that's like ka-ching, 2 million, ka-ching, another 2 million, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. That's why this nation is in debt. That's why it's monopoly money, and don't nobody in the rest of the world want it to use it no more. So the U.S. is going to war to force these people. But I think they crossed the line with that G side, and they've shown that you can't, no matter what administration, Democrat, Republican, you guys are a bunch of savages. That's our leadership in the U.S. I'm glad, though, that that's not the majority of the United States people's thinking on it. But again, we don't really live in a democracy if the actions of the people we quote unquote elected don't match the will of the people in such clear majorities. So tell me again how we vote and live in a democracy. It's just an illusion. We go through, the physical act of casting the ballot, but it just seems that the people who end up in there, no matter how radical or different or things they say that we agree, once they get in there, they part of the club. So let's just stop pretending like the United States government has any cause to be trying to blame Iran for anything. This sovereign nation. And it just goes to show the United States government just simply doesn't change. This is its history. Hell, it hasn't even, I've seen a live today on TikTok talking about the slavery matter today, why we keep bringing up slavery. They talking about post-Civil War slavery, not recognizing the fact that slavery wasn't abolished. Slavery just has different forms. The UN Charter on Human Rights recognized there are different forms of slavery. There are such things called wage slavery. And then there's prison slavery, which was created to replace chattel slavery, pre-1865. This is a fact. So anybody that's talking about the United States has abolished slavery is factually incorrect and under an illusion and believing a false narrative that had been spun to them since they entered K through 12. And I was a victim too. I didn't know until 2013. What a coincidence that I would read the 13th Amendment in 2013 and create the program New Abolitionist Radio to tell other people that, hey, this a problem. And then making a historical connection to the other people who came before me and was talking about they didn't abolish slavery. Prison Slavery is the actual title of a book by a former prison slave named Lee Wood, who's probably no longer with us because he would be in his 80s by now and his health was bad. I lost contact with him. Him and Barbara Esposito published a book in 1971 or 72 called Prison Slavery and pointed to the 13th Amendment. Then there's a doctor. So again, why would anybody, other nation in the world would trust anybody who say they abolished slavery, had a whole civil war about it. But then when you look at the highest law of the land, the Constitution, it says slavery and involuntary servitude shall be abolished except as punishment for crime. And then we know what happened after that. Or those who read know Jim Crow segregation and the creation of laws to throw people in the prisons, in the jails, and then just happen to lease them out to the same plantations and corporations as labor, cheap labor. Now, instead of the slaver getting the plantation owner, as we like to call them, having all the profits for himself, even though they were paying taxes. But now you got to pay your local government or your state government or the federal government to use these slaves. Victims of slavery. We shouldn't use dehumanizing terms, reducing people to a slave. That was the legal condition. These were human beings who were kidnapped and forced with the threat of death. That's what the United States is saying to the rest of the world. And so if they still carrying on this charade, what makes you think they're going to deal honestly with you? If I was Russia, China, Iran, I just keep doing what I'm doing and building the BRICS coalition, which over 100 and something years. And I know we're going to suffer here in the United States when the dollar crash and what have you. But I'm a spiritual person, and I do know that we got it coming collectively. And that maybe this system does need to just fall apart, this corporation be dissolved, because it is a corporation, but the corporation be dissolved, and then we reorganize. We get the most logical, most sane people, educated people, and we'll start over. Because what we have has not been working for the majority of us. It's working against us and exploiting us for the quote unquote 1%. I would say the top 5%, 10%. If you at the top anywhere, this pure capitalist pig pyramid, you ain't get there without exploitation. So again, if anybody wants to disagree, they can come on up. I just want to acknowledge everybody that came through in the chat. Let me just say hello, everyone. Let's see here. Do we got anybody that wants to disagree with anything I've said? Let's see. So if y'all acknowledge what I'm spitting is true, or you agree with it, go ahead and share the live, like the live, share it with your friends. If you would like to see more of these type of educational lives, I encourage everyone to fact check anything that I've said. And if I've gotten anything wrong, I am not some egotistical maniac that's going to be unable or refuse to acknowledge that I got something wrong. Not a narcissist. So let me see what I want to move to next. Some polls. Let me see. How long have I been on air? Because I do have some other things I need to get done. So, all right. So if this is you, and you on these lives, or you're in these comments and you're saying things, similar things, I challenge you to come on up. Don't be afraid. This is virtual. I can't reach out and touch you. But if the Iran nuclear deal was working, why didn't the Obama administration fully lift the sanctions it promised to under the JCPOA? I guess that would be for liberals, right? Those who cite that as some kind of accomplishment. Now, I guess it is an accomplishment if you can get a sovereign nation to let it dictate to you, let you dictate to it how they develop their nuclear energy, and you get them to go along with that, then I guess it is an accomplishment. It's not a good accomplishment, but then to negotiate this deal and then not to implement it. Okay, it's saying go to the live studio. Uh-oh, let me try to verify this thing. There we go. I gotta get used to these laws. It was like it was going to log off on me. So, I mean, it was working for the United States. It seemed like Iran was the only honest broker in this deal. Again, confirmed by other groups. Why wasn't Obama holding up his end? Why wasn't Congress holding up their end? What does that say to the rest of the world? Don't do business with you. And for the long-term health of our individual nations, let's come together and create our own currency and our own trade exchange and deals. And we don't need SWIFT, and that's what's being worked on, y'all. And that's going to be the thing that make the empire fall. And Trump has threatened to wage war on these people, and Iran is just one of them. Now they have even more reason to be savage towards them. But the rest of the world, though, ain't the pushover it used to be. We no longer lead the world in military technology. and natural allies like China and Iran and Russia, our army can't. Stop lying to yourself. Just because those U.S. ships, naval ships, are allowed to float anywhere in the region, it's because Iran allows it. Again, you cannot stop a hypersonic missile. You're going to expend all of your anti-missile batteries when all these drones come in. You can't deal with the Houthis. All of that bombing stuff, and that's what we did during Iraq. There were no great battles or anything like that. George H.W. Bush, you can look it up, it's him on TV telling y'all, we're going to bomb them for 40 days and 40 nights, being sarcastic and ghoulish. You know, you ever heard of Arabian Nights? This is how these people think about unaliving people around the world. They ain't no big deal to them. We're going to bomb them for 40 days and 40 nights. And what did they bomb? Civilian infrastructure, everything under Geneva Conventions and international law that's considered a war crime. And Mike Miller, the former member of the Bush administration, recently admitted, he said this while they were still in office, and the media was calling him out. Some members of the media was calling him out on Israel's targeting of civilians and calling it war crimes and whatever. And Mike Miller said the United States has done the same thing. So, but now he's admitting that these were indeed war crimes. So that by admitting that Israel is doing war crimes, you're saying Israel emulate the United States like they did to Iraq. Then what we did was war crimes. What the campaign I got a medal for participating in was a war crime. Millions unalived in that war. And then during the Clinton administration, I forgot how many tens of thousands of children were starved to death. This is all verifiable. Starved to death under Clinton's administration. And this is before we came in and bombed them for 40 days and 40 nights and then sent infantry in there to mop up after you done obliterated all it. Man, them people still kept fighting though, didn't they? And still fighting to this day. Again, the USA are the bad guys in this. And I'm glad the majority of the American people are dissatisfied and don't agree with what these officials, both unelected and elected, are supporting around the world. Why we just can't get along with everybody? Why can't we live in a world where we're not trying to compete with each other and dominate markets and force other people to use our currency, but have a fair exchange of goods and trade of knowledge? Them people light years ahead of us in EV technology and whatnot. Instead of there being a competition, what if they were, we'll be happy to come over and teach you how to build this and build that, and you can have manufacturing in there. And then, this world could be so much better if people just collaborated and making the world better. We could be living in the Jetsons. So I'm dating myself because I was a kid when the futuristic cartoon, The Jetsons, was on. Man, we'd be, you know what I'm saying? We could have been there already. We weren't investing in destruction and unaliving people and just taking their stuff. Don't have to be this way. It's more of us than it is of them. So again, that's an open challenge question. How can you say Iran was dealt with in good faith when U.S. businesses were still banned from trading and Iran was blocked from using the global financial system? The U.S. pushed these countries to come up with an alternative electronic payment system routed through their banks and bypassing them. Any logical person will react the same and do the same. And if I see I got a bully in common, we got bullies in common, hey, let's exchange knowledge, technology, and plan for the long term. You know, we're going to isolate this bully and then, you know, we ain't got to worry about it. There's no other country outside of the United States and its NATO partners that's been spreading death, destruction, and neo-colonialism than the U.S. and NATO. The worst people on the planet, the worst government. I ain't gonna put it on the people, but the worst government. If you support them, then you know you can get in that basket over there, that basket of deplorables with them. And Hillary's in that basket too. So you know you'll keep hearing on the mainstream media, and it'll be a lie saying Iran didn't hold up its end. They just gonna keep saying they weren't holding up their end. That's not the reason Trump gave when he tore it up. But the facts are that the U.S. intelligence and IAEA inspectors repeatedly confirmed they were in compliance before Trump tore it up. But we want to hold people to these false narratives. And then no wonder they looking at us like, y'all just evil, bro. Y'all just evil. Y'all the great Satan, as they used to call them in the 80s. Y'all just so evil. We gonna call y'all the great Satan. Because, yeah, we know who Satan is because we one of the three Abrahamic religions. So, yeah, y'all are the synagogue of Satan over there. That's what they saying to us. And if that offends you, then, man, that's some snowflake energy right there. Oh, he said mean words about us because we was picking on them and doing this and that to them. And then they called us a bully and now we mad. Now we got to bully them some more. I'm sick of this world. Ain't y'all sick of this world? Again, my psychiatrist will confirm to you this is why I'm in therapy right now. Horrible place. So I don't understand how people here in the United States, I do understand it, but it's just hard to accept that we want to treat repeated, right in our face violations of international agreements, not to mention international law on, we'll call it policy shifts. Whether or not we're going to obey the U.S. Constitution, it depends on who's in office. When it comes down to it, they really don't. When was the last time articles of impeachment was introduced for a president for violating their oath to the Constitution and exercising powers not delegated to the executive branch, to the Constitution? Oh, Donald Trump. Those impeachments Representative Green introduced, that was bipartisanly defeated. 150 Democrats said, we don't care if Donald Trump waged war on Iran without permission or even informing Congress. But of course, we let Obama do it, and then we let the ones before him do it. Oh, we let Biden do it too, that whole stuff with Ukraine. Why we can't have nice? How come we can't have electric trains, bullet trains? How come we can't have nice, really nice, affordable EV cars? And why we got to buy Teslas, or however you say the name, Elon Musk stuff to keep catching on fire? Because of U.S. tariffs and what have you, to protect, quote unquote, U.S. businesses. So you're really not into an open and free market, are you? Because it appears some people have better technology and products than you, so, oh, Lord. Which is why you move your manufacturing, I'm talking these corporations, in the first place. So let's just stop lying and hold ourselves or our government to higher standards, like obeying the law. Is that too much to ask? To ask that they obey the law, that they stop transferring weapons of mass destruction to Israel in violation of the Leahy law. We're all in front of us. Nobody ever gets held accountable. I know y'all J6ers was talking about holding some people accountable, but not for the right reasons. For some partisan, cultist bullshit. You should be ashamed and embarrassed if you was out there that day, acting like you was some kind of patriot. So I don't think the real goal of U.S. policy, whatever administration, is not about peace and it's not about non-proliferation. Because if it was, Israel will be all arms and aid to Israel would stop from the United States to force them to come in compliance and to force them to join the non-proliferation treaty. That's why in the West and on these TV broadcast platforms like Fox News and even some on the left or CNN, the reason that they have to use religion is because their actions just don't match up to the facts and their motives are clearly evil, unethical, pick a word. And it's clear on the surface of this. If we was to place ourselves in the adversarial role as individuals, would you want to deal with somebody like that? Do you want to be friends? I know I don't. I don't mess with a lot of people, man, in the real world. My circle extends to just a few people beyond my immediate family. But Israel's not under any sanctions. In fact, we just reward them with U.S. monopoly money and arms. They then take the monopoly money and then give the monopoly money to the private defense industries or corporations like Raytheon and others. Y'all see how that works? Congress votes, the president signs it into law if it passes, to tell the Federal Reserve to issue a certain amount of monopoly money to Israel, so Israel can then take that same monopoly money and give it to the defense contractors for weapons of mass destruction. If that ain't a freaking scam, I don't know what is. You wonder why we don't have nice things, why they got universal health care. They got free tuition-free colleges. Israel practice a form of socialism. They even pay the rent of some of those settlers that they invite over there to come live in these illegal settlements on Palestinian land. And we hate say that Israel's paying these people because Israel get all of their monopoly money from us. I know they got some shekels and stuff like that, but that ain't nothing compared to the U.S. monopoly money. See, I've been going about 1 hour and 17 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up here pretty shortly. Let me check again, see if anybody want to come up and disagree. If you disagree with what I'm putting down, I would love to hear from you. So before I close out, let's get to the polls. I think I made my point about why would anybody deal with the United States government? You know, these are not honorable people. The track record shows that. So let's go over some of the polls. All right, U.S. war with Iran shows public reluctance. A YouGov poll, June 23rd, 2025, only 5% of Americans want the U.S. to go to war with Iran, while 85% oppose it and 10% aren't sure. See what I mean? That's a clear majority, right? That's a clear majority. Clear majority. 71% of us follow the Iran airstrikes closely. 84% worried the conflict could escalate. Only 36% support the recent U.S. strikes, while 45% oppose. So that was from Reuters, June 21 through 23. Here's a Reuters Ipsos poll, June 23rd, 2025. 79% fear Iran may retaliate by targeting U.S. civilians. See, this plays into the brainwashing of thinking that Iran funds terrorism and is not actually fighting terrorism. Again, Iran was the one who was taking out Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Muammar Gaddafi in Libya was the one that was taking out Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And then they get taken out by who? The daddy of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, the United States of America Incorporated. Prove me wrong. So we fear that's how they'll retaliate. And I guess that's a legitimate fear. But if Iran was like that, I think they would have been done it. So again, let's not forget that we have false flags all throughout U.S. history. It's easy to find a person of any color, any background. You pay them enough money, they'll do anything they want you to do. Because some people are just built that way or programmed that way. 84% are concerned about the broader conflict's impact, and they should. Because if the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down, what do you think gonna happen to consumer prices? We already know from the C-19 pandemic. Wait a minute. Let me back up. I was looking at something else and got distracted. I thought somebody was coming up. Concerned about the broader conflict's impact. Yeah, the price of groceries. We know the grocers, these corporations, were gouging us during the pandemic on their pricing on food and staples. Just basic stuff, man. They made hefty profits during the emergency. All right. So if the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down, that's going to do what to the price of oil? It's going to be used as an excuse for us to be paying whatever at the pump. We already pay some of the highest gas prices among the world, but we hear so much about, hey, the United States got a lot of natural oil and all this and that. And then, well, really? We do? Then why the price of gas so high? Could it be these corporations are exploiting us? You know, like Mossadegh of Iran in the 1950s asked of BP, are you cheating us? We let you come in here and help us start our oil refinery and the business, and we think you skimming. We think you skimming us and robbing us of some of the profits. Oh no, you can't look at the books. Here come the United States on behalf of the UK and formats an overthrow and installs a brutal dictator who tortures people for as long as he's in power. And then you think the young people, the students of the 1979 revolution were supposed to be over there saying, God bless America? No, they rightly should have been giving us a middle finger. But you notice they didn't slaughter the so-called hostages. No, they let them go. After, Reagan agreed to give them some missiles on the down low to protect themselves. You just hold on to these hostages until after the election, and then I'll make sure you get some missiles to defend yourself. Here's my boy Oliver North, who we'll see today on Fox News, saying Iran shouldn't have nukes when he gave them missiles. Yeah. Man, we are the most gas-lit nation of people than I can imagine anywhere, but we have in our heads that these other countries, and they may have some strict media guidelines and what have you, but we don't have no free media, man. We don't really have no free, unbiased media, because you're going to be biased when it comes to making profits. What's good for you if you're an unethical person? So let's go to The Quinnipiac University poll, June 22nd, 24, 51% opposed joining Israel in strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, 42% support. So no matter what the majority of the people, you can look at Congress and see how they voted. But Congress didn't vote because Trump violated the Constitution and colluded with a foreign government to attack a sovereign nation, who by all intelligent assessments was abiding by their nuclear deal, which you tore up the last time. Man, again, put yourself in these other people's shoes. See, that's why you need to demonize their religion, even though they have Christians and Jews there, even though there may be some prohibitive rules, like you can't proselytize to other Muslims and try to convert them. But they are written in with certain protections in the Constitution. But of course, Fox News and CNN not going to tell you that. But anyway, that's why they have to demonize these people as a bunch of terrorists, and they want to behead you and bring up imagery and revoke things from like the Crusades and what have you, that same type of language. And again, a lot of these people are Zionist cultists. They call themselves Christian, but it don't matter what religion. You could be an atheist and be a Zionist, meaning you just back Israel no matter what. But that same Quinnipiac University poll, 78% concerned about being drawn into war. That's the people that's concerned about, who really care about the truth, who really care about a 20-something-year-old Scotty just joined the army and what have you, did 2 months of basic training. Yeah, 2 months of basic training, about a month and a half of advanced training, and yeah, we're gonna send him to war. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Because it is a lot different than the Gulf War I was a part of. It'll be a lot, man, I'm telling you, and I don't want to see them casualties. Will the U.S. inflict tremendous casualties? Of course, that's what they're good at, is unaliving people. They've shown us that in all these wars, non-stop wars. They'll unalive some civilians. That don't matter. But it's good to see almost 80% of the U.S. Population, or those polled, don't want to see that. Those are the logical ones. The ones perhaps, I don't know their reasoning, but perhaps got empathy for these young people. And not so young people. Maybe that's also why in the news, I caught an article or a headline that was saying that Trump removed one of their generals that did not want to go along with attacking Iran. And apparently they really are planning regime change, and so they kicked him out because he wasn't on board with that. Because some of these generals know we'll lose that war. I don't think it would be any winners. Who's really winning in war? Except for those who profit off the weapons of war. Support, let's see. I do want to mention, even though this is unrelated to Iran, but actually connected to Iran, 53% of Americans now have an unfavorable view of Israel, which is up from 42% in 2022. Favorability among white evangelicals remains high at 72%, while Democrats have become much more negative. See, that because those white evangelicals have been programmed since Sunday school, like Ted Cruz, that you're to bow down and worship Israel, that being lied to, that Israel in the Bible is the Israel we see today. And if we help them do this, and then, all the world will want to attack them, they don't never tell you why they want to attack you, because you over here doing this mess you doing now. And then the apocalypse going to happen and Jesus going to come back. And do you really think this is what your actions is what Jesus would do? You're not asking yours. This is programming, y'all. These Christians, these type of Christians, and it's not just white ones, it's some black ones, but it's just not as prevalent, because the majority of black churches, pastors told Joe Biden and them that our congregations is, we, concerned about this genocide y'all doing, bro. Nobody listened. Kamala didn't listen. So, this is not about democracy. This is not about liberating anyone. I think I'm going to close with this. I think this is also about socialism. Because guess who got free higher education, tuition-free higher education? Iran. Who has free public health care? Iran. See, these countries that nationalize their natural resources and then spend the revenue generated from those resources in improving the material conditions of their nations, investing in infrastructure and education and science and medicine and providing it for all. Capitalist countries like the United States and other capitalists in Europe they can't see these models succeed. That's why they really hate China. China then damn near eliminated poverty, and they got way more people than we got. How they do that? And we still got people sleeping under bridges and hungry. I was reading the other day about stores in my local area during this heat wave was kicking homeless people out who was trying to go in Walmart and other places to stay cool and what have you. And wow, cutting food stamps or food aid. And we're seeing this current Congress and the president want to do, man. But again, China doesn't go around the world threatening people with their weapons and saying, you either do this deal and do what we say, or we're going to invade and bomb and we'll bring regime change to you, buddy. No, they don't do that. And that's why they on the rise and the U.S. is on the decline. They invest in their people. They care about their people. And I don't give a damn if it's just one party. See, we got two parties, which really is one party here in the United States, but they're giving us the illusion of democracy while they work to keep other parties off the ballot and keep a stranglehold on power. They do that together. So you got one party, the Communist Party of China, or China, I don't know the exact name of it. You just got one party, but you got people debating within those parties policy to make it better. I like something this man who I became exposed to a few years ago. He just talks about racism and white supremacy. He wrote what was called a compensatory code book, I believe the name, but his name is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. He would have been in his 90s, but he passed recently, and he would be on internet radio programs with us and what have you. But he said something, I ain't always agree with everything he said, but of course, you know, that's just human nature. We're not always going to agree. But anyway, he said something to me that was very profound. He said, nobody should care about who's in charge as long as nobody's being mistreated and everyone is getting the help that they need. Who cares what you call the system? And me just adding on to what he said, who cares about what you call that system? I don't care. Call it democracy, call it plutocracy, call it monarch, whatever. I don't care. Who's in charge, what you call it. If all of these are ethical, empathetic people who are not seeking personal fortune, fame, and wealth, who are not going to go along with evil. I don't care what their religion, they could be an atheist, whatever. We all can define good and evil. We can all define what's a crime and what's not a crime. And the United States has continuously, bipartisanly committed crimes against the rest of the world, crimes against humanity since its founding. That's just a hard, honest truth. And I'm an American. I can admit that, why can't you? So, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. I want to thank those that came through for stopping through and checking us out. And, you know, check out the channel. Give me a like, give me a follow, give me a sub. I'll post this to our networks, our other networks. And hopefully, you know, things will go the way the majority of us want them to go. And that's peace. With that said, peace and blessings to all.